Howard, my dad was T-boned by a utility vehicle and is in surgery now. What should I do?
I'm sorry to hear about that. It's really great that you're getting him the medical care and treatment that he needs right now. These are three important things that I think you need to know. Injuries are unexpected and turn lives upside down. I'm Howard Ankin, and I'm here to help. If you or a loved one have been hurt at work or in a car, truck, or rideshare accident, call 312-6-million. Injury law made personal. That's Ankin Law.
From your favorite source for Chicago White Sox talk, delivering news, interviews, analysis, and more. This is the Sox Machine Podcast with your hosts, Jim Margulis, James Fegan, and Josh Nelson.
Thanks, Rob, and welcome to the Sox Machine Podcast. I'm your host, Josh Nelson, and it's Sunday night, June 7th, 2026, as we record this show. The Chicago White Sox have started their 12-game gauntlet in Philadelphia this past weekend, and it didn't go great. They lost 2 out of 3 games, and the White Sox have now lost back-to-back road series to start June. As a matter of fact, the White Sox have now lost 5 straight road series. That's not good. But there are some positives to take away from this weekend. The offense continues to find ways to score runs without Munetaka Murakami. We saw Jacob Gonzalez hit his first career Major League Baseball home run, and Tristan Peters is on a heater. We'll talk about those topics and other happenings from Philly. Look ahead to this upcoming homestand, as on paper, it'll be the toughest of the season as the Atlanta Braves and Los Angeles Dodgers visit. Jim Margulis visited the Birmingham Barons in Knoxville, Tennessee, so we'll get his report from there. And we'll take a look around Major League Baseball. So let's get started. Joining me, our Sox Machines beat reporter James Fegan and managing editor Jim Margulis. And hello, gentlemen. The White Sox lost 2 out of 3 in Philadelphia. They are currently 34-31, but Cleveland didn't have a great weekend either, so the gap is still only 2 games in the American League Central. The White Sox do have 2 games in hand. Well, let's start with the good that happened in Philadelphia, Jim. The offense scored 6 runs, and 5 runs. And usually that's good enough to win a series. Munetaka Murakami has now missed 8 games due to injury, but the White Sox have scored 5 or more runs in 6 of those 8 games. The White Sox do have a 4-4 record without Murakami. Are you surprised with how the White Sox are able to stack up these 5 or more run outbursts without Murakami?
A little, especially since Colson Montgomery is not having the greatest week. Like, he had a slump, getting out of the slump a little bit, but he wasn't one of those destroyer of worlds weeks that can compensate for 2 guys being out of the lineup when he's on. And that would be the first place I'd look. But then you look at the rest of the lineup, and like Andrew Benintendi is kind of filling that role for some left-handed pop in Murakami's absence. You're getting Sam Antonacci reaching base nearly half the time, which makes a huge difference just in terms of quantity of chances. Like, they don't have to convert every single chance, because it seems like between the top of the order with Antonacci and then you get towards the bottom of the order with Tristan Peters providing that kind of OBP down below, like even Riku Nishida is kind of just making himself useful at times, getting on base and running the bases. They have an interesting mix of power that's left over from like the previous or like the first iteration of this offense, but with Murakami out, you're seeing more of this kind of water bug offense of just having guys being able to go from first to home and getting on first a lot, to where they are getting an extra run when maybe you'd think they'd get 1 in an inning, and you're starting to see them get crooked numbers in a different way. They have the second best OBP over the last week. So that's, terms of the kind of offense we're not used to seeing from the White Sox. Getting on base, they're doing that. And I think that's, we've had many problems with the White Sox offense over the course of since 2021, basically. One of them was not enough left-hand power. Another one was like no OBP, no walks. Or in the case of Antonacci, like no hit by pitches, but just not creating quantity of chances and having to hit well with runners in scoring position, just because they might only get like 7 chances a game. And they have to go like 3 for 7, or else 2 for 7 might not make a difference. And now you're seeing, double-digit at-bats. You're seeing double digits left on base, which, double-edged sword. But, usually if you have an offense stranding a lot of guys, that means they have a lot of guys on base, and maybe some of those guys scored earlier in the inning. And that's ultimately what you want. If you don't have, Murakami in the middle of the order, you're providing like three, home run leaders basically, with Montgomery and Vargas as well. So right now it's a very effective offense. There's a lot of unproven guys contributing to it, which gives it an element of the unknown, but I guess that might be working for him in terms of how to scout and defend them.
And Jim mentioned Tristan Peters, James, and Peters is on a heater. In his last 15 games, Tristan Peters is 20 for 43. I mean, he's almost hitting 500 in his last 15 games with only 3 walks and only 3 strikeouts. So it's a lot of balls in play. And what I'm noticing, James, watching Peters and his at-bats, to me, he's swinging with a lot more confidence than we saw from how this season started for Peters, where it looked like sometimes he was just trying to put the ball in play or try to bunt for a hit. Now he's starting to hit the ball with more authority, picking up the doubles, which has been a huge benefit to the White Sox lineup. In a season of surprises, James, where does Tristan Peters' season in 2026 stack up?
Pretty surprising since, before the late flurry in the offseason, and trying to talk to White Sox people about their new hitters, it was kind of like a lot of talking about Murakami, and then Everson Barrera, got a plan for him. Who's this scrolling down, checks notes, Tristan Peters person, and getting some generic answers about like, we value contact ability and plate discipline, so we'll build a plan for him as he comes in spring training. Not like, this is going to be our starting center fielder or anything like that. I think he snuck up on everyone in that regard to a great degree. And it's funny, like, he talking to Tristan about it, he said like his opening message when they were expressing confidence in him was a lot of it was about defense, and he's obviously, that's a big part of like why he's kind of a baseline good person to put in a lineup for a good starter, even if some of this, the clear regression signs in his offense, come to pass, like 375 BABIP and stuff like that, and swing decisions. But ironically, one of the things that has kind of been off from is he's chasing a great deal, and I think that was something that was a little off for him at the start of the season, but still is kind of there in his game. He'll expand sometimes, but the contact rate's been really great. I felt like Sunday was another example of like, you see him like get into one, and he certainly is making hard contact a lot more often, but like seeming like he gets into makes a square contact as you can imagine, and it hits off the top of the wall still somehow. Like the power that he's worked to add, like it's there, and he's not seemingly getting the full rewards from it just yet, but certainly the contact ability has been sticky enough where if he is, per outs above average, an above average center fielder, or at least top 10 in the sport, and he is making as much contact as he is, even if like his approach needs to narrow down a little bit when, he's not getting the bloop doubles falling in the way he did on Sunday. It's kind of like the bones of a good starting center fielder, certainly a good placeholder for the foreseeable future, since, even asking about Brandon Montgomery to Chris Getz in Minnesota, he was like, he's playing out there in center, but, we see him being a corner guy long-term in any meaningful way. So I think center field's still pretty wide open for years to come, until we have a broader reshuffling of what the options are. That if you can make a lot of contact, put balls in play, run the bases as well as Tristan Peters does, and plays defense, you can have this role for a while, even if you don't hit over 500, which he has for the last 11 games. Even though Josh conspired to find a split that makes him look worse, there's really no downplaying for how hot he's been right now. So I think he's staking a claim to that spot that didn't seem that open to him at the start of the year, but certainly wasn't fortified, and now he's running and take it.
So the beginning of this season, Jim, I thought we could be watching the worst outfield in White Sox history, especially in the last 25 years. And what's amazing about Tristan Peters' season so far is that if you go to Fangraphs.com, this is before Sunday's update, so it might be higher. But Tristan Peters, Jim, was already at 1.7 WAR, and the White Sox center field collective as a team is at 1.4 WAR. they're already outpacing last year's center field production. If you told me before the season started that don't worry about missing Luis Robert Jr., Josh, because Tristan Peters is going to come in and outproduce Luis Robert, I would have never believed you. But this is where we are, Jim.
Well, I'm definitely not somebody who had to look up multiple times when writing about them which one was Tristan Peters and which one was Tanner Murray. Definitely did not have that problem. Definitely did not almost publish post conflating the two. So yeah, I had confidence in him all along. But when you look at the rookie leaderboard, like top 3 in the American League, McGonigal, Murakami, Peters, like that's pretty, at least in Fangraphs, they might have to get some difference with Baseball Reference in terms of having so much dependent on defense. But if he's keeping it up, like it's fascinating down ballot conversation in the awards race. And you can ask about like how much you value platoon players versus full-time players because he's barely played against lefties. And that's another reason why his numbers look good. But I mean, filling out the long side of a platoon, like they couldn't find anybody to fill out any side of a platoon for a lot of these outfield spots over the last few years. So yeah, there's no complaints there.
Yeah, if you go to Baseball Savant, like I guess the flip side for those that are not believers in Tristan Peters, if you're trying to look for evidence, you just go to baseballsavant.com, look up Tristan Peters, and the batted ball data is very blue. A lot's red. His fielding, especially in red. His BABA right now is 368. So maybe this does come down a little bit. But even if it does come down, James, as far as like if Tristan Peters regresses, this is a huge win for the White Sox, right? I mean, as you mentioned, nobody really expected anything out of Peters. And the fact that the White Sox could get maybe a 2-WAR or even better season out of Tristan Peters, that's a huge win for the organization.
It's actually up to 375 because of the 2 doubles today. So.
Okay, wow. Thank you.
But yeah.
So if it comes down from the 375,
I think it's not a case of you talk to them and they're like, we saw that Tristan Peters was this beautiful, brilliant baseball angel, and none of you had the faith, and you'll be smoten for your infidelity. It's more like we have this practice. We're accumulating guys we think can be quality depth. We put them through our programs that we think could help, and ideally a couple of them pop. And you're probably not going to predict exactly which one will to what degree, but they view this as like, yeah, this is good process, but not necessarily like we pulled one over on the whole baseball world. Kind of like the same way Murakami was like, oh, this risk made sense for us. The upside was there. We took our shot in an opportunity where we saw other people might not. And it really worked out. Great for us and not. And I think that's probably to their, encouraging that they kind of just view it as like this. These are the hits that are going to come to the process that they're doing, as opposed to like, all right, we've ran into a homer and now we need to like try to replicate everything we did this one time because we otherwise can't figure out how we like happened upon this insane luck. And now we're just going to sign everyone out of Japan sight unseen because that, or like some other like weird, like not process oriented judgment to take from it. I feel like Peters is in that vein of like, it made sense. We exposed him a few things we thought could help. And we had this pop on us and not like, well, now we just need to get like find every like underpowered tweener outfielder out there and throw them all into our mix. And that's going to be what our outfield composition is from here on out. So yes, it's a good win. Certainly if you look at it in a vacuum of like acquisition costs, even though like there are some of these deals that go the other way where there's not a 40-man spot. So you sell for cash and, the Sox will probably get burned on the other end at some point. I can even probably think of one right now, but it's encouraging signs that they're coming upon these wins that, they seemingly couldn't ever come upon for years. And it's something that's kind of more like, oh, we caught this fish in our net. We weren't even like really looking for it type of situation for them.
Well, the other highlight offensively for the White Sox this weekend, Jacob Gonzalez, Jim, hit his first home run of the season, and it was not a cheapie. He absolutely crushed it over 400 feet into the upper deck. in Philadelphia. But I think the best part of it, and you wrote about it on SoxMachine.com for the listeners that didn't get a chance to read the spare notes, the Phillies broadcast, old friend John Crook, was part of what made that highlight pretty funny from their perspective, not really knowing what Mike Vasil was doing in the dugout.
Yeah, I saw the description of the clip first, and I thought like there was totally them eating crow and making fun of Mike Vasil. And they're just more fascinated by what's the guy doing with a wand, speculating about the wand. They're about to Google it when Gonzalez went deep. And I think that's a healthy sign for the White Sox. Just, over the last 3 years, 300 lost seasons, losing a season in modern MLB history 2 years ago. And it was very easy just to assume what you're going to see when the White Sox came to town, which was a fun weekend for your team or the home team. Lots of high fives in the stands. Lots of guys being churned through, not really interesting stories, not really having to do oppo research because there aren't a whole lot of fixtures or anybody really lighting the league on fire. It might be more guys underperforming and what's the problem with Tim Anderson or what's the problem with Yohan Moncada or why is this person not playing? And after a while that gets old, so you just don't talk about them. And like that's when I'd watch an opposing feed, you just didn't get much. Sometimes they wouldn't even pronounce the names right because of just how transient the roster was. And we know that from the season-ending sporkles of just trying to remember who actually played for the White Sox. And you can very much empathize with opposing booth that's trying to make sense of it or wondering how much effort to put into learning this roster if they're going to leave town in 3 days and they won't have to think about the White Sox again or this particular edition of the White Sox again. So, watching the whole inning and after Montgomery went deep 2 batters before, they're talking about, wow, this team's really aggressive. They create action. They have some athletes. It's a young team. They don't seem to understand that they shouldn't be here and they're making stuff happen. And then, as they're looking into Vasil waving the wand as he was doing after the Montgomery homer, then Gonzalez goes deep and they marvel at that. So yeah, I think this is what you want. If you're watching the White Sox is a fascination in them that's not morbid, because that's basically what it's been, is just like, how bad can it get for the White Sox? Is every time anybody thought about them was, how are there still fans? Or how is the Pope a fan? How much can the Pope help? Like that was really the entire storyline for the last year plus was the Pope and why and how and are we truly blessed because we are so meek, etc. And now it's actually doing stuff. And even though the Phillies won the series, like the White Sox made them work and they threw counter punches, kind of a bar fight. And I think that's, if they're going to have these series where they look overmatched at times, or you get reminded that this is a young team and they still have, they're still trying to figure out fixtures at rotation spots, or you're on the diamond, like that's what you want to see, is at least that feistiness that makes opposing broadcasters who aren't familiar with them say, do a double take basically and say, who are these guys?
Well, let's talk about the bad and why the White Sox ended up losing this series to Philadelphia. And the Phillies offense can be quite potent. They've been on a roll as of late, and they scored a lot of runs against the White Sox pitchers. And I'm a bit surprised, James, on how well the Phillies left-handed bats fared against White Sox left-handed pitchers. Kyle Schwarber went 4 for 5 in the opening game, went hitless the other 2, but he walked 3 times. Bryce Harper went 4 for 11. And man, Brandon Marsh, the White Sox pitchers do not want to see him again. He went 5 for 12 in this series with 3 home runs. He hit a home run in each of the games. And Brian Hudson did not have a very fun weekend. Anthony Kay really struggled in that opening game, and Kay was really dominating left-handed hitters to start the season. So did the Phillies left-handed bats expose White Sox left-handed pitchers in this weekend?
Maybe. I mean, I don't like. Let me answer it another way. They have really good, like Harper and Schwarber are somewhat. They're not necessarily left-handed hitters that you expect you can put down just because you have someone left-handed with a sweeper. And now they're like kind of foiled or taken out of action. So like they're good left-handed hitters who can look good against a lot of people. Hudson not having like a good weekend and having a couple bad outings. One, he was due for the season, but also like that's like your main pillar in terms of like the bullpen. Like Sean Newcomb was great, but like beyond those like top two lefties, I think the last two lefties in the Sox pen are a bit more of the fungible variety. Isert obviously had some solid stretches up to this point, but as someone who's been up and down this year, and Gilbert's been someone that they have been doing up and down a lot, that kind of being interchangeable as Chris Murphy. Yeah, you'd want them to like perform well, but they're not necessarily like permanent pieces of this mix, like long term for like how they'll get lefties out over the course of the season. Hey, in terms of like the bat missing, like he's more of like a contact oriented guy. It's a bit harder to manage contact with those two, with Schwarber and Harper, and certainly like there was FIP and xERA, especially based on like his first month, still doesn't like him just because of the lack of the missed bats and his mix. So he's been getting like a better angle on righties since moving a little bit over on the rubber, and that's part of it. But just someone who I think doesn't have like this huge margin for error where if he's behind in the count consistently, he can like has a bunch of pitches that can get him out from under it. Like he needs, like, if you ask him about things that were about like his dominant month, like sure there'll be some tweaks here and there that he'll acknowledge, but the main thing will be like, oh, I was just ahead in the count, so I could use more at pitches and kind of hammer at more and more. So like it's something where if he doesn't do it, like it's a lot more of like trying to run vulnerable four seamers by people. So yeah, they had a bad weekend, and I think the larger like question of this playoff run being viable is kind of the whether or not they have enough pitching depth or enough of it will recover in time to help them. I think we went into the start of the year with like, hey, we're going to be in mid-June, and there's kind of more or less zero war between Noah Schultz, Shane Smith, Hagen Smith, Tanner McDougal, David Sandlin. You're kind of thinking like the rotation's probably running out of gas a little bit, and it kind of speaks to how well Martin and Burke and really Kay for the most part have been, that sort of not seeing that big groundswell from Charlotte showing immediate results has not like toppled the rotation yet. But that's certainly like what the finishing kick for this rotation sustain itself needs to have, is like that big Charlotte rotation that we thought was like going to provide depth reinforcements, if not an outright line change, becoming something that's operational, which it's hard to see right here in June, at least in the short term, with this difficult stretch with Schultz's rehab process getting slowed, Tanner McDougal really still hoping to get back by the All-Star break, Shane Smith probably on a similar schedule, and Hagen Smith's showing signs, but in terms of like immediate readiness, us trying to talk ourselves into like, yeah, he's needing 90 plus pitches to get to 5 innings, but he's missing bats like crazy. It looks more like an intermediate step to him being ready than him actually being ready, and it's maybe a little bit of what it felt like with Samlin, but there's just kind of a need there in terms of how stretched out he got and how comfortable he got with his arm side moving pitches. So it's a long deviation from are the left-handers getting exposed by the Phillies pitching, but it's more just like I think pitching at large it's in a little bit of a strain point right now and I think it's probably going forward as far as like even more than can the offense sustain this with Murakami out, because at least that's kind of a fixed idea with that, and you feel good about injecting Kyle Teal in that eventually too at some point. Whether they have enough of pitching to get through this whole season, I think is an existential question beyond even just like how bad they look this weekend.
Well, that's why pitching is so expensive, Jim, both in free agency and now as we approach the trade market, is I think a lot of teams have that same question that James brings up. Do we have enough pitching? For Sox Machine readers and the podcast listeners, Jim, that are already trying to come up with hypothetical trades? And I think after this weekend, especially on social media, White Sox fans are aware that this team could really use some more pitching. Is that where Chris Getz should be shopping right now, is to see any of these teams that might be falling out of the race? Hey, which of your relievers gets left-handed bats out? Because that's where we could use some help.
I think in an ideal White Sox roster where, the arms James mentioned with McDougal and Shane Smith and Schultz being healthy, like this would be a great entry point for Hagen Smith if he were to be introduced to the roster. Is let's deploy him as the Grant Taylor on the left side of just 2 innings of wipeout stuff. Doesn't matter how inefficient he is for a playoff push. Here comes the left-handed weapon to pair with our right-handed super weapon. And now all of a sudden we just have to worry about the first 5 innings of a game basically, because between him and then like you have Dominguez and Newcomb for the innings before, depending on lefties and righties, and that's a really deep bullpen. But now, yeah, Smith probably, the Hagen version, probably needs to be reserved for rotation just because nobody else is cutting it. Like Jonathan Cannon is kind of lost, it seems, and Charlotte Duncan Davitt's been, not good. So it's just been, whether it's been the pitchers who are supposed to inherit the spots or the guys who are supposed to be serviceable 6th starter options who might be worth a 4-week run to help patch some spots. Like nobody's really doing the job right now. So it gets to the point almost where where's Adrian Hauser? Like it's looking at opt-outs basically and trying to find, I keep expecting Austin Voth to come back somehow because he keeps bouncing around, and there wasn't a spot for him in spring with all the pitchers the White Sox had and all the innings that they had to give to the guys in AAA. But now it's like you up in terms of just how many innings there are available, be it at Charlotte or with the White Sox, should somebody get there. So yeah, it's pretty thin right now. Like the thing that jumped out to me with Hudson, like when he's struggling, I think the sweeper command or the control, a lot of non-competitive sweeper. So it does come back to his fastball and whether how much does his extension work against hitters when they see it coming versus the sweeper keeping him honest. And that's I think probably the biggest thing keeping him on track, because you look at the chase percentage is pretty bad, and then you look at the in zone percentage for the sweeper and it's not that great. So I think between lefties not having to honor that pitch necessarily, especially when the count tilts in their favor, might be a reason why like good lefties didn't really seem fazed by him.
Well, I do want to pitch an idea to you, James, and you recently wrote about Sean Newcomb on SoxMachine.com. Podcast listeners, if you get a chance to read that feature, highly recommend it. Newcomb's looked great, and this is a really good free agent signing by the White Sox. Against the Phillies, he went 2 1/3 innings, only allowed 1 hit, struck out 3. In 13 of his last 14 appearances for Sean Newcomb have been scoreless. He's been nails for the White Sox, but he's been mostly a multi-inning guy. 2 more tough series coming up with Atlanta and the Los Angeles Dodgers, James. Instead of using Newcomb once a series for 2 or more innings, does it make sense to try to use him more often for just 1 inning, like try to get him into more games?
I guess if you're worried about Hudson or Dominguez being as consistent as you need them to be as like single inning leverage guys, there's a case for it. They've definitely gone back and forth with it before. They're certainly leaning into multi-inning right now. And I think maybe Grant Taylor is a bit less married to the multi-inning than he was before. Certainly some recent examples of that. It's a really cool tool that certainly their rotation, like coming up short in terms of inning loads with guys you're protecting with openers, like whether it's either Sandlin or Fetty, who, they're not really probably extending beyond 2 trips to the batting order in some way. Having someone who then drags the game from the 5th to the end of the 5th to the 8th, I think they definitely like someone doing that who can do it at like a leverage level proficiency where the game, you're not signing up to let it get out of hand kind of the way where if you used, someone who's non-leverage level to do that. Also, like to a degree for Newcomb, one, he feels like he can handle it because he's on pace for like 96 innings. And like, does he get that shame like load if he's working like single innings more frequently? Because he threw like 92 2/3, I think, last year. Anyway, he feels like he's in the same territory as he threw last year. Long story short. And for someone who, obviously we never thought he was like a leading candidate, but, came into camp, competing for the starting rotation. Newcomb's very like, yeah, in these longer stints, I get to use my full mix because that was the big thing he wanted. Is like, I feel like got command of 5-6 pitches again, and I want to do that, which is kind of like why he felt like, obviously everyone wants to start. There's a lot more rewards involved, but that was his case of like, I feel like I'm a better pitcher if I get to use all this. And this is a role that's kind of like a hybrid to that.
Got it.
Obviously, Newcomb, if we're watching him, sinker slur four seamer is doing pretty well. If he shrunk to that, I don't know if we'd lose like a ton. Like, you wouldn't appreciate the full album, but those three singles, those are really what's getting everyone to the dance floor. So I don't know if you really lose a ton, but he's probably physically and in terms of arsenal, if they were going to have someone like that, the best suited to do this. Other than just like even Grant Taylor, like you want him to get stretched out with the idea that starters down the road, but like I think Newcomb is like like Taylor can really be a 2-pitch guy and be like one of the best relievers in baseball, and the rest of it is a little bit like, well, he should throw a slider, he should throw a sinker if there's an opportunity to. Whereas I think Newcomb's maybe a bit farther down on that journey. If you get into a place where like Hudson like regresses, or if Sir Anthony Dominguez, we've seen what that looks like when it's going a little haywire before, then I think there's maybe more of a case to bringing Newcomb back to like, hey, we just need somebody to get us through the late innings. If there's one guy to do this, I think Newcomb might be the best one to do it.
Yeah, because this upcoming weekend with the Dodgers, that's Ohtani, that's Freeman, that's Muncy, Jim. If this series, let's say, and that would be a good thing for the White Sox if they put up 5 or more runs against the Dodgers next weekend. They play these tight games. And if Hudson or the other lefties can't, you don't trust him to go up against the top of the order of the Dodgers. That's why I'm thinking, like, does it make sense to hold Newcomb back and see if you could use him multiple times in that series against LA? He's
been better against righties than lefties so far this season. Like, obviously, like looking at his shape and his delivery, it looks like a lefty arsenal, but just to stipulate, like the results are, this is someone who, has better results against righties. So the way, like the point, like the value of him is that you don't really have to worry about that so much.
Got it.
I think it's going to be like a lot of white knuckling, similar to the Phillies series.
It doesn't matter who's on the mound.
Yeah. Yep. All these guys are good. I think you get used to like the way the Central has unfolded. I think you kind of get into a lull of lefties who could be pitched to, and then you get to the lefties who are all-stars and making $150 million to $700 million or whatever it is, and then you're like, oh yeah, that's the difference.
Yeah, well, we'll see how often the White Sox use Grant Taylor this upcoming homestand, which we'll be previewing in this show in a moment. But before we preview the upcoming series between the White Sox and the Atlanta Braves, Jim, you visited the Birmingham Barons, but this time in Knoxville, Tennessee. How was your trip to Knoxville?
Aside from my wife getting her car towed, pretty good. One tip if you go to Knoxville is be really diligent about the lots you park in and which ones are reserved spaces and not. Or in this case, it was a case where you had to know the lots because there was like an invisible line apparently between the lot that was paid for and the lot that was not paid for. And came back after the game and realized the car wasn't there, and that was a real fun evening because the lots, it's next to the old city in Knoxville, so the pay lots are pretty small. They rely a lot on parking around the city because it's a few blocks walk, and it's a nice walk. A lot of good restaurants in the area. But yeah, if you're going there and you don't park in one of the stadium team lots, then just pay close attention to the and make sure it's well lit too, to where you can really investigate your spot to make sure that you are in the correct lot that you're paying for. But otherwise, beautiful park. Like first time there, went a couple years ago when they were in Sevierville, which is kind of closer to the Smoky Mountains exits where you get to the real tourist trap stuff. And that was like a 25-year-old park and like a nice one, nice enough, credible for hosting a AA park and drew okay crowds. But clearly in this post-contraction era of minor league baseball where there's a lot of leverage for for Major League Baseball to exact on markets to say, well, we need newer facilities with X, Y, and Z. And if you don't provide this, another city might. And do you want to lose your minor league baseball team and not get it back? Because I think you're not going to see minor league baseball grow anytime soon. You're seeing a lot of it's hard to think of a bad stadium. Like, I don't know if you can think of one, James, in terms of ones you've been to. Like, we've referred to like the old Kannapolis ballpark and the Castle and Fort Mill before the Charlotte opened Truist Field. And like, I can think of the bad ones, like the Five County Stadium where the Carolina Mudcats played, which was like a charming dump. But now just, that's replaced. Chattanooga got a new ballpark. Knoxville's a beautiful new ballpark. Like, there really aren't any, like McCormick Field, Nashville is really like the only old one I can think of. And that's like charming old and like 290 feet to right field and like a complete anachronism for, but just it's a great market in a cute little ballpark, and you hope it doesn't go away. But can you think of any like ballparks that exist or being used by an affiliated team that really should be replaced?
I'm trying to I felt like the Greensboro Stadium where the Greensboro Grasshoppers played was fine. I just think like when I went there back in like 2017, I was like to interview Cease right after the trade. If I had had your camera back then to shoot it like in that dark tunnel they had us in, or they were all practicing in, it would look like a found footage horror movie where like Cease is just talking with the camera and there's just nothing but darkness and weird industrial noises around him. But that's the actual going out and watching the park game in the park. I don't remember it being that negative.
Well, it's also, you have to look to see if these stadiums are rehab too, because like Syracuse, I thought, well, that was kind of an unimpressive place and age probably hasn't done any favors, and that's been rehabbed. And same thing with Lackawanna County Stadium, Scranton Wilkes-Barre, like that's been rehabbed.
Do the Hagerstown Suns still exist?
Don't know. I think they do.
Certain former Nats prospects turns White Sox.
Oh no, it's they no longer
might
exist.
have referenced inconsistent heating in the showers.
Yeah, you look it up and say we're a minor league baseball team on Wikipedia. That's all you need to know. Yeah, 2020. So yeah, they were among the teams that died. But yeah, so anyway, that's the Knoxville Stadium is beautiful and one of the better parks I've been to. But then it's hard to think like they're all good. They're Durham's great, Charlotte's great, Birmingham's great. Like they're all great. Like it's
Indianapolis.
I feel
really
like
nice.
yeah, it's like my if I were trying to be a food critic, just like, yeah, it was good. Like I can't really speak to the quality of the food I got or the preparation that went involved. Like, yeah, I liked eating it. It's good in my stomach.
I've listened to a lot of pitcher complaints about pitching in Asheville, but I don't think that while they are targeted at the stadium, they're not about the user experience, I feel, as much.
Yeah, like they draw great crowds. It's a great place to go. Like beers, in terms of like you can have one extra beer and walk to the park and walk back to your hotel. Like you don't have to drive and enjoy all the great breweries they have. So it's really a great setting there. But yeah, as for the Barons themselves, I got to see Gabe Davis in person, large, 6'9", real good fastball. Like he has hit 98s with it. The breaking ball command was what hurt him. Like some bad counts where he got in fastball and like top of the order could hit his fastball, bottom of the order couldn't. Owen Ayers gave him a hard time. He had a homer. He had a second homer initially called his first at bat, but as a ground rule double. And like the second base umpire was the only one who didn't see it bounce. Everybody else, I think he thought it bounced in the bullpen. But even like Ayers stopped at second, and the umpire's like spinning his finger and nobody's picking it up, and he's taking off his equipment at second base because he saw it bounce. It was very odd, but yeah, a little bit of a tough sun. I think that's maybe the one thing about Knoxville is like it looked pretty brutal for the outfielders early on. But yeah, Gabe Davis looks like a real good arm, just a matter of dialing it in. But given that he was a project, like I think the project's pretty far along. James talked to him. The fact that he's in Double-A and kind of aced his assignment at High-A, great sign. Yeah, and it was just like a batter at a time where he looked maybe a little bit off. He was able to kind of put it together before the end of the inning. So Like we saw there, like Anthony DePino continuing to hit the ball hard. Colby Shelton, plate appearance to plate appearance, doesn't look lost. Like his numbers are bad, but you watch him and just like ball's kind of not falling, or he's kind of rolling over pitches. I think he's learning how he's being pitched to, but not the kind of thing where he looks completely overwhelmed or late on AA velocity or anything like that. So we'll see if he turns around. But yeah, it's nice to be able to talk to John Kovalik, the pitching coach, like 2 weeks in a row, basically, and say like have follow-ups or have new guys to talk about. That's one thing that I think James gets to enjoy, being around the same people every day, to where it's not like a fresh introduction every time you talk to somebody, and more like, hey, remember what we talked about recently? And you don't waste so much time having to play catch up or establish bona fides, etc., to where you get these second level conversations about guys. But I'll have a big ass Birmingham notebook tomorrow or Monday, today on Sox Machine, just because we have an off day to fill. So
nice.
Expect 1,000, 2,000 words or whatever about conversations ahead.
Sometimes the intro can be more fun than the "what the hell is it now" Fegan type of response.
Yeah, he's like, "You want to run it back?" And he's like, "No, actually, got new guys to talk about." Gabe Davis wasn't around, and like that's mainly who we talked about. But yeah, I would like, it's nice to get to that point where you have the "what is it now?" or "you're back." I'm like, yes, I am. Versus who are you again? White guy with a beard. Like,
yeah,
you see a lot of you around minor league ballparks, and yeah, that tends to be how it goes. Where people have to meet me 3 times, remember meeting me once, which is both a liability and an asset sometimes. Like I've learned not to, if somebody says like, have a great trip, and I say you too, and like, or some kind of like foot and mouth thing, we realize like, oh, I forgot I even talked to them when I talk to them next year. And I've shed a lot of anxiety that way when I realize that maybe the first meeting, I don't make that memorable of an impression on somebody. It helps.
With Gabe Davis, I looked back through some of my MLB draft reports, and I did write one about him when watching as far as his early season, junior year with Oklahoma State. Big velocity, but I was worried that there's high reliever risk with Gabe. Did you see the same thing with the Barons in this version of Gabe Davis, Jim?
The lefties got to him. So it's a small 1 start, 4 innings. Depending on what he's emphasizing, but just like didn't see much of the changeup. So that would be my one. If I had to extrapolate a concern based on one look, that might be like, what does he have for lefties? And then part of that was like the breaking ball command of just being in fastball counts against lefties. How much of it was that versus never being able to get into accounts because he doesn't have confidence with his secondary pitches. What he has for them against lefties would be the question mark there. But no, I mean, like, I think he's ahead of schedule to where, like, if you're talking about the finer points, then you're already winning because probably coming off his season OSU is one of like, is he healthy? Can he even pitch? And then like, is he even throwing strikes? And so the fact that we're now drilling down into the third level elements of what a pitcher can bring to a AA roster, I think is pretty good for him.
It's a worthwhile project to see if he can be a starter because he's got the build and he's got the velocity.
He maintained it too. Like the velocity was fine, throughout 4 innings.
That's good. I was just worried about the consistency when I was watching him at Oklahoma State. When he faces better hitters, do you just want to flip him, make him a reliever, and see if you can get him to 100 or higher with his type of arm? But good stuff, Jim. Thank you for that report from Knoxville. And now back to the Chicago White Sox. The Atlanta Braves, the best team in Major League Baseball, are now visiting. This is a Tuesday through Thursday series as the White Sox, as Jim mentioned earlier, have the day off on Monday. 45-21 record for the Atlanta Braves. They have won their last 3 games. They are 8-2 in their last 10, and they have been awesome on the road. They are 23-10 away from Atlanta. Your pitching probables for this series, all the games start at 6:40 p.m. Central Time. Tuesday, June 9th, there'll be Eric Fetty for the White Sox against Grant Holmes for the Atlanta Braves. He has a season earned run average of 3.86. On Wednesday, June 10th, this is Pride Night at Rate Field. They are expecting a heavily attended crowd Wednesday night, and they're going to be seeing old friend Chris Sale pitch for the Atlanta Braves, to be determined for the White Sox. And then on Thursday, June 11th, another old friend, Martin Perez, will be pitching for the Braves and for the White Sox, to be determined. Offensively for the Braves, lots of home runs. Matt Olson's got 17 homers, 47 RBIs. Drake Baldwin is not slumping in his sophomore year. He's got 13 homers and 38 RBIs. Michael Harris has 13 homers and 40 RBIs, and Ozzie Albies has 10 homers and 36 RBIs. You're probably wondering, hey, you're missing Ronald Acuna, and Acuna's been having a pretty decent season. He's got 7 homers and 22 RBIs. His OPS is hovering around 800. He's got 15 stolen bases, but that's like 5th. That's how dangerous the Braves lineup has been. We'll see how the White Sox pitchers fare against this mighty Atlanta lineup. And speaking of White Sox pitchers, the to-be-determined part for the White Sox starting pitchers, James, any insight on what the pitching plan is for the White Sox against the Braves?
Well, I mean, the fundamental thing they're accomplishing is pushing Davis Martin back, since he would have been due up on Tuesday. They've kind of referenced it before and cutting some of his starts short that they thought could go longer when he's cruising the blowout. He's done like 140-ish innings like 3 times in his career, but he's currently on pace for like north of 180. Yes, I am old enough to remember when that was standard, and ideally I think Davis would want it to be, but certainly with his last start being out of whack and kind of making references to finding opportunities to give him extra rest before, you could theoretically push him all the way back to Thursday and put K on regular rest on Wednesday if they wanted to. That seems to be like the immediate obvious thing that you're doing with this. And you know, he kind of referenced being out of whack post game his last start in Minnesota. Certainly didn't seem like physically anything was off, but that's been kind of like the main thing that's been foreshadowed and is immediately accomplished by doing this. They'll go ahead and speculate on where they'll might use openers, whether for Fetty again, given the Atlanta has some left-handed thunder.
All right, well, that's good insight to know. Also, James let me know that Drake Baldwin is still dealing with an oblique injury, so the White Sox will not be having to deal with Baldwin for this upcoming series. But other than watching the best team in Major League Baseball, Jim, and the Braves last year got snake bitten on the injury front, they did not have a good time. They are back with vengeance in 2026. But we're seeing old friends. We knew we would get a chance to see Chris Sale, but Martin Perez has been pitching well for the Atlanta Braves, Jim. Are you surprised in both Chris Sale at this stage of his career and Martin Perez being this effective?
Chris Sale, no. As long as he's healthy, like that's really the only sticking point, it seems, between him being good and more than useful versus non-factor is just whether he can take the ball. If he's on the mound and throwing without restriction, then it's probably great, and that's cool. Like, he's going to be a Hall of Famer at this point. I think it's pretty safe to say. He's approaching 60 wins above replacement, baseball reference wise, 150 wins, historically good strikeout to walk rates, everything like that. He's got the Cy Young, he's got a World Series ring, like he's got a whole bunch of finishes. I think probably in terms of my baseball writing experience, probably the individual most compelling pitcher I've seen based on his origin story and just per start dominance. Like, it's a shock that he hasn't thrown a no hitter. Just basically, when you watch him, no hitter is always a surprise, but when you watch his per start dominance with the White Sox, it's like, how is he not throwing 3 already? So cool to see him have this second wind and put this kind of big finishing stamp on his career, and it might not even be close to over yet, but just enough to get him over, I think, the line for Cooperstown. I was looking back at the 2024 start against the White Sox where they beat them 1-0. Do you remember the pitchers involved in that game?
Oh, what's his face?
Definitely a lot of shoot there.
Yeah, it was 3 innings that he got the win. He was in the middle innings. He got 3 scoreless innings, so he got the win. I remember as a nobody who started it, or like somebody who just will be forgotten.
Everybody's somebody.
Yeah.
Was there Chad Cool action in this one?
Chad Cool. Justin Anderson, Chad Cole threw 3 innings. Justin Anderson 1, Schuster 3, John Brebbia an inning, Michael Kopech an inning, and they combined for a 3-hitter to beat Chris Sale, who threw 7 innings and struck out 11, and just had the misfortune of giving up a solo shot to Luis Robert Jr. So a bright spot in that season.
It's giving just Grand Slam sort of.
Yes. Where James and I first met. The origin story. So curious to see if that happens again. But yeah, Chris Sale, cool that he's doing it. Martin Perez, surprising in a sense that he keeps regrouping, and the fact that he's advancing into his mid-30s and keeps having these arm issues, and you think it's going to add up at some point, given that he never threw that hard in the first place or never did anything as extremely good as Sale to where you feel like he can lose a lot of physical capabilities and still deliver above average baseball. But I was thinking to our conversation last year about him, saying, looking at his free agent history and his track record, and realizing that basically every team that signs him was glad they did. Maybe they didn't get as much as they wanted from him, or maybe it was a half season, or maybe he got a hot streak and then had a bad spell, but he contributed something to a roster, and he seemed like a solid citizen who had a lot to say for teammates, and people liked having him around, and teams reacquired him to where he didn't wear out his welcome. So in the sense of the overall theme of Martin Perez, teams realized hey, it was all right, we signed him. Then he is delivering on that front. And it made me think oh man, this could have been the mutual option the White Sox could have worked out to where he came back and it worked. But then I looked it up, and Perez actually declined his half the option. The White Sox did not decline it, which was what was expected of just, you want to pay Perez $10 million after only being healthy for 50 something innings. No, but it actually turned out Perez declined it and the White Sox announced it. So I think it was more you can't fire me, I quit, and going back to free agency that way. But had Perez accepted it, you might be looking at that hole differently, and then we could talk about mutual options in a whole new light, much to James's delight.
No mutual option is meant to exist. It's there's no reason to be had here. Perez, I'm surprised because in talking about his injury in the past tense when he came back in September, Perez thought well, I thought that was the end of my career, a lot, very openly, kind of were you expecting the big ones coming any kind of day soon, was the way he discussed it. And then he had another injury to knock him out near the end of the year. So just from a physical standpoint, it kind of seemed he felt like the end was nearing. To which the other surprising detail about him is he is striking out a career high 20.9% of hitters.
Wow.
13 seasons in the majors, or 15? Started debuted in 2012. Never has struck out this many hitters.
Damn. Well, we'll see how the White Sox hitters fare against Martin Perez. I'm not expecting great things to happen on Wednesday, unless you're a Braves fan. Then Chris Sale could have himself a day. This White Sox still very left-handed heavy. Miguel Vargas is going to be needed. We'll see if Derek Hill can contribute. And we may get a fun little moment with Luis Angel Acuna and his brother Ronald Acuna playing in the same game against each other. So that could be fun things to see. The White Sox have been a lot better at home. So hopefully the hot streak playing at home helps out the White Sox against the Braves.
Well, it's funny. I'm looking at his numbers now, and basically he's thrown the identical amount of innings, 56 to the White Sox, 56 and 2/3, going back to Perez. Allowed 40 hits both times. Walked 22 at the White Sox, walked 20 with the Braves, gave up 6 homers each time. So basically it's the identical output with just a few more strikeouts. But yeah, it's just the fact that it's like the near catastrophic injury he suffered last year didn't happen. Just if everybody forgets about it, then he'll just keep doing what he's been doing. And from basically all accounts, good for him.
And then the last thing on this episode, as we usually do for our Monday shows, we take a look around Major League Baseball and chime in quickly on what's catching our attention. Jim, I'll start with you. What's catching your attention around Major League Baseball?
Padres are in a bad spot.
Very bad spot.
Yeah, the offense is in, talking about the White Sox offense and how they've been able to exist without Murakami, and just like it's a weird year for offense, and that like the Padres name brand talent, like Tatis has 1 homer, Machado's hitting well under 200 and complaining about analytics. Like they're having a real tough time, and just you wouldn't expect that from the Padres. Like their offense was supposed to be killer basically, or pretty good, pretty deep at least. Maybe Machado loses something, but just up and down the lineup, you can start a rally from anywhere, and just haven't gotten that at all. Like Machado's hitting homers, like he's one. He and Gavin Sheets are the power sources, and Machado's only hitting homers basically, not providing anything else, and they're just griping about it. They were neck and neck with the Dodgers, and now they're well behind in the NL West. Looks like the Dodgers are going to run away with it. So yeah, it's kind of weird how suddenly you're getting like Mets-like kind of chaos from them. And they've always been interesting in terms of like who they hire and all the behind the scenes grumbling you get from them based on whose sources are what. But yeah, I'm just, when you hand that team over to Craig Stammen, just very odd managerial hire. And they've had some hires like that before. Like Jace Tingler was another one, just where things kind of went sideways on him. First time manager. You get some strange mixes, I think, based on the talent and the hyper aggressive general manager, but also like some managers, they kind of veer between proven and unproven and proven and unproven, and very strange dynamic at times. And it seems like this is one of those episodes they're having.
I mean, the Padres pitching wise has been pretty good. I mean, that's the reason why they're 33-31. They're only allowing a little more than 4 runs per game, just 259 runs allowed in 64 games. But yeah, they've only scored 241 runs. I mean, this offense, Jim, to your point, it's not averaging 4 runs per game. There's just too much offensive talent. I know in the past, especially off-season plan projects, Jake Cronenworth has been very popular target for the White Sox. His OPS starts with a 4. So they're in real trouble. My buddy Brent, he's a Padres season ticket holder. He texted me last night, Jim, it's time for a reload. Like, that's all he texted me. And it's hard to argue. I don't know on how the Padres would reload.
Is that just free of context of the Padres? Just time for a reload seems...
No, I knew.
Man, check in on your friends out there when they send you cryptic text.
Well, it first started with AJ Ewing looks like he's 12 years old. So I know that he was at the Padres game. He was watching the Padres game. And then it was, man, this team. And then like 7 minutes later, all right, they need to reload. I just don't know how the Padres do that, though. These contracts are very large, and Machado and Tatis, and I'm shocked at how poorly they've been playing.
New owners coming. Well, I guess we'll find out what they have to bring.
I guess, but
not that mattered for Baltimore. You didn't see turning over the team from the Angeloses to Rubenstein didn't really make a huge difference there.
No, it has not. So maybe this just ends up being a bad season for San Diego, but after you've unloaded and you made so many big, bold trades in the middle of the season, I don't know if AJ Preller has enough prospect ammo to be able to pull off another trade like that to help salvage San Diego's season. So maybe the Padres are not buyers before the deadline, and that will be something new. James, how about you? What's catching your attention around Major League Baseball?
So I was going to say the Padres, but I was trying to think of a situation where the White Sox are getting basically like the reverse Tristan Peters, where they're getting burned on someone they gave up. And I remembered over the course of the episode, Curtis Mead is obviously part of the Nationals offense being surprisingly great. And this explanation doesn't work all the way, because like the Rays would probably much rather have Tristan Peters right now over like Cedric Mullins on guaranteed money. But they've probably built up this reputation with their fans at this point that there's going to be misfires, but they're generally, when they cut depth, they're mixing and matching, they're finding good solutions. Like their track record on their like being proactive and not just like letting talented guys walk out the door for no reason is pretty established. And so, like, yeah, Curtis Mead would certainly be useful right now, as opposed to like, hey, Jacob Gonzalez, replace Munetaka Murakami, please, if you could, as far as like depth results. But it's maybe a bit easier when, hey, that's going to happen. He was the 40-man casualty. He's out of options. And you feel pretty good about, like, they went with Miguel Vargas to be their everyday third baseman. And, hey, we're going to give this, Japanese guy that we signed a shot to get first base. And there's just not corner infield bats for you. We're going to go in a different direction, more defensive flexibility for this spare roster spot. I'm sure Sox fans would probably, certainly in hindsight, pick Curtis Mead taking the DH role over Andrew Benintendi, but at least at the end of spring, that wasn't like proven to be a better decision or an obvious, like, reasonable. But just the general idea is that if you're consistently working these avenues to find talent on your own, or taking, being responsible with your opportunities, or coming up with credible options via your depth or your development in a way, you're going to have talented guys slip out the door or slip through the cracks in some way, and it could be all right. And it's not like this something to be viewed in a vacuum of, oh, I hope Boston Smith really lives up to the 3-WAR season that Curtis Mead is putting together, but more viewing this as like, hey, you're gonna get surprise pops out of this process. You're gonna get some guys who slip out, and you're hoping on balance that the decisions make sense and you come out ahead. And it's probably a lot easier to say that with the White Sox now than when 2 years ago, and it's a battle to find like 3 credible hitters to rub together and even like mount the threat, and any kind of Curtis Mead walking out the door like looms very large. It kind of reflects them being in a healthier place right now, that someone can slip out and be part of this Nationals revival and not really be this like thing that's torturing or like blowing up on White Sox Twitter every day, the way it probably would have been even in 2022, when they're just, you have a good team that has just these holes that it can't find solutions for.
And it's almost like, hey, you had a good idea with Curtis Mead.
Right.
Timing didn't quite work out to make it happen, but you were on the right track.
You weren't based in nothing here. He didn't flame out here and then retire, and now he's selling his business, new business venture on his Instagram account, and that's the only thing we have to keep track of his progress.
But that will do it for this episode of the Sox Machine Podcast. Thank you guys so much for listening. If you just discovered the Sox Machine Podcast, you can subscribe to the show wherever you listen to podcasts, such as Spotify and Apple Music. Check out our videos as well. With the White Sox being at home this upcoming week, we'll have more pre- and post-game conference footage that we'll be posting onto our YouTube channel. You can check out our videos at youtube.com/SoxMachine. Follow us on social media. We're on all the platforms at Sox Machine. You can follow James at JR Fegan. You can follow me at SoxMachine_Josh. When it comes to our subscriptions, we've been running a sale as long as the White Sox are above 500. And where are we at now?
Let me check. So I haven't updated today. Still they're at 52%. So it's a 523 winning percentage, 52 cents now for your first month of a Sox Machine subscription.
And many of you have signed up, so huge thank you. Your subscriptions allow us to travel on the road, and with the White Sox being good and in playoff contention, we love to send James out on the road to cover those games and get as much intel as possible, and to do those wonderful feature stories, especially even in the minor league front for Jim to visit Knoxville. So your subscriptions make that happen. So if you enjoy our work and you want full access to all of our coverage of the Chicago White Sox, Major League Baseball, the upcoming Major League Baseball draft, sign up at SoxMachine.com/products, take advantage of that first month discount, and sign up today. The Sox Machine Podcast is a production of SoxMachine.com. You're on for all things Chicago White Sox baseball and part of the Blue Wire Podcast Network. Alongside Jim Margulis and James Fegan, I'm Josh Nelson. Thanks for listening and watching.